I would see a lot of ghosts because normally I grew up in a haunted house. You see the ghost, you feel the ghost, you have it touch you. I used to do ghost hunting, and if I go into an environment that has bad energy, I get nauseous, and I get this phone call, and the way that I'm going to say it is her entity called me up, an attached entity, and I'm just going to say they are the narcissists of the spirit world. They'll come into your auric field, and what they want to do is control and manipulate you. He said that someone had been killed in the house, and to me, it was the dead guy that lived in the basement.
Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Chronicles of the Unexplained podcast. Today, we're going to have a really interesting conversation with a person that I recently met through one of the groups that I follow on Facebook. I have the pleasure to have Dr. Rita Louise. Rita, thanks so much for being here. I was reading amazing information about you. I'm so amazed with the videos that you have on YouTube. But I would like you to present yourself for the audience and they know who you are. If you can please give us your social media and the webpage and all the details so that people can find your amazing work.
Social media. All right, I'm not sure. I can do a little of that. Okay, so hi, I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and I have worked as a medical intuitive and intuitive counselor for, I'm just going to say, over 20 years, because I'm just being kind to myself. I'm a very passionate person, and so if there's something that I have an interest in, or if I have a question about, I tend to do this deep diving so that I can find out what the answer is. And so because of that, I've written 7 books covering areas from health from a subtle energy perspective and developing your psychic abilities, to a book on ghosts and ghost hunting, to 2 books on ancient aliens, and then my 2 most recent books have been about narcissistic relationships and then healing yourself from the narcissistic relationship. So,
wow, that is interesting.
But I just do what interests me. I do what spirit moves me to do. I had my own podcast for 10 years. It's called Just Energy Radio. So that's probably where you saw my videos was on Just Energy Radio. And I'm just going to pitch this right up front. So on Thursday nights on that channel, and that's 3 words, Just Energy Radio, because a lot of people go, Energy Radio. I'm like, no, it's just Energy Radio. But on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Central, I do Thursday Night Live with Dr. Rita Louise, and I open it up with a message, which usually lasts about 15 minutes. So right now, I'm doing a series on detoxification. So last week, we did detoxifying the body. And this week's it's going to be detoxifying your mind and emotions. So that's going to be good.
Yeah, interesting.
I open it up, and especially if you go to the YouTube channel, you can get into the chat from that point and get a free on-air psychic reading from me. Bam. Just like that. It's really fun. Great group of people. And I'm going to say this because this has been very powerful for me, is that there are people that come every week. They're my loyal followers, but I've seen these massive changes in them because, I don't know if you believe this, but when we interact with someone, it's like either we match our vibration, either we come up to match or we go down to match, or there's a discord that happens. People tell me that I have just very high vibrating energy. And I have found that people that just come and participate, their vibration changes and they become happier. It just changes, because they're in that vibration for an hour every week.
Yeah, wow, that is amazing. I will try. Well, it's a little bit hard for me because Thursday at 7, I have a class in the gym, but from time to time, I will try to get connected to see the psychic reading. And talking about psychic abilities, watching one of your videos, you mentioned that you were interested to read and read a lot of books since you were kid. And by doing that, you became more enlightened, right? And you mentioned in that video that could be something for you to help to be with these psychic abilities. So tell me a little bit more about how did you discover that? What you think about it? What is your perspective? Can I read and read and get to the point to have that psychic abilities, or is something that has to be since the very beginning of your life?
So I believe that everyone has psychic abilities of one level or another, and it's kind of like the examples I give is it's kind of like drawing. Some people are wonderful. You give them a pen and paper and they produce this wonderful piece of art. And then you give me that piece of paper and it's a little stick figure with the house with the triangle roof. You know what I mean? It's not that great. Or the same thing with dancing. You can have Fred Astaire or Baryshnikov or whatever. And then you have people that can't really keep a beat on the dance floor, but they're dancing. They're just not good at it. And so the same thing with psychic abilities. Some people are more open, and more sensitive to receiving that information where other people aren't. Now, what I have found is that most people don't recognize that because psychic abilities, it's a very internal sense. It's a felt sense, and not necessarily like a feeling thing, because you might be a visual person, but it's still very internal. And no one's ever, and that was my case, no one ever said, if you feel this, or if you think this, or if you see this in your mind's eye, and it happens to be true, without any advance notice, then that is a psychic thing. And so many people think that they're intuitive. If you ask a room full of people, 3/4 of the room will raise their hand that they're intuitive on some level or another. But what they don't understand is that when you're having an intuitive moment, you are having a psychic moment, and it's just a language issue that they think there's something different when there's not.
So there is an acronym ESP that you mentioned, extra
sensory perception.
Yes. So what would be the difference between the intuition and the ESP from your point of view?
So back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, in that era, that's the term that they used to talk about psychic abilities. They didn't say psychic. They said that you had ESP, that kind of thing. And so the vernacular has really changed. I mean, they didn't even really use the word intuition as a replacement for psychic abilities, but it's all coming through on the same channel.
Okay. So other thing that brought my attention, you mentioned tarot cards. Is that something, is that tarot cards needed to be able to read things on a person, or is something that you can do it without the tarot cards?
I mean, when I work with clients, I don't use cards at all.
Okay.
When I do my show, and I don't do tarot cards, I do a different deck. I'll pull a card because for me, I can access the information quicker. It kind of gives me something to focus on. But they're just a tool to give you guidance, and I'm going to kind of diss here for a minute. So I try to memorize, my quest to be psychic. One of the things was I wanted to memorize the tarot cards because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. Like the 8 of Cups means this, which I was a complete and utter failure. Because I just couldn't. You can ask me about some of the weirdest things on the planet, but to memorize those cards, it just would not stick in my brain. But I used to run a psychic fair, and and I would read tarot cards, and so I just would look at the picture and be like, blah, 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 and just talk. And it was interesting because I had other readers, they were my ladies, that we would swap readings, and I would just like do a tarot reading for them with their cards, and they never complained.
Okay.
Like, well, that's not really accurate or nothing, because, for me, it's just a tool to open up a dialogue, and to start a story.
Okay. It's not like this magic bubble that the witchcraft or witches uses to to see the future, like a fortune teller. It is not like that,
But
or
it's the same thing. That's just a different tool.
okay.
Like using a crystal ball, it's called scrying. And I don't really understand how they do that, but they just look into the ball and then they receive information. From a technical perspective, I don't really get it.
Okay.
But I had a girlfriend who did tea leaf readings, which was really interesting. And so she goes, here, you try it. And so, we made a cup of tea and you dumped it out. And I'm looking in the cup and I'm like, and there was something that looked like a duck. And I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't even about the duck. It was just this thought that came to me, which is how psychic stuff works, is you look at the duck and then you get some weird whatever. Because from an internal point of view, when I'm talking to a complete stranger, it almost feels like I'm making it up, because I'm just going, oh, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know what I'm talking. I mean, I know what I'm talking about, but, and they're just sitting there like, yeah, that resonates with me.
Oh, the question for you is because okay, I'm gonna tell you something about my son. When he was kid, he used to have weird dreams. So at the beginning, I was just thinking, oh, he sees a lot of movies, video games, blah blah blah. But he started to tell me like my room is alive, the walls are breathing. But with the time, I realized that he had the capacity or the capability to. I mean, he has. Or he had or he has ESP. I was going crazy, Rita, because I couldn't help him. I'm Catholic, and there was one occasion he called me to my job and he said, "Mom, your prayers don't work." He was doing homework and somebody grabbed his knee and he was alone. So these situations at the beginning, he had dreams, and then he had visions like a ghosts or transparent persons in the cemetery, wherever, at school, even when he was on vacation. So I had to take him to a person that somebody recommended me, a cleansing or something like that. And she had like a tarot cards. And since the very beginning, when I was the first person that I went with her, she told me, "You have a little witch." So talking about my son, and I was like, oh my God. So, and I didn't tell her anything. And she gave a tarot cards to my son. She told him, you can learn how to grab the cards, think about a color you liked, concentrate in a space, like a quiet space, think about that person and think only in that color. Get concentrated and you will have something will cross your mind. And he did that probably 2-3 times. He was a little bit afraid and he didn't want to do it anymore. So have you experienced anything like when a person arrives and asks you to do the reading for her or him, whatever it is the person, and have you gotten anything from that person, like any vision from the past, from the future? How does that work with you, Rita? I mean, because you are a science person, right? You had these degrees, and I was going to ask you if you believe in paranormal. Majority of the persons, like my dad is doctor. Mm-hmm. And he didn't believe in the past in any of these situations until he experienced several things. His perspective changed because of that. Tell me a little bit about you when you do this.
So when I'm doing them, And I'm just trying to make it be simple. I just communicate what I'm feeling. I tend to be a very visual person, and so I will see images in my mind's eye, and so I have to take these pictures and then translate them into English, because it's like, describing the Last Supper, auditory versus, you see the picture, because I see the picture in my head, but how do you describe that? And it's interesting, and this has been going on for the last few years, because I do a lot of work, health work. I'm a naturopathic physician with a PhD in natural health counseling. So I do a lot of health work with people. And so we'll be talking about, like I was just working with a gentleman who was having a heart issue. And I think one of his valves is starting to fail, but he doesn't really want to go to the doctor. And so I made some recommendations on herbs for him. But then I told him, I said, if this situation happens again, you have to get it checked out, because I feel like there was a weakness, but it wasn't like he was going to die, but he needed to go get it checked out. Sometimes it's a one-time thing. Sometimes it's just a series, and so when I'm kind of feeling into his heart and asking his body, what does it need? I'll sometimes get like weird stuff. So not this guy, but I had somebody that had a kidney issue going on. This is one of the ones I remember the most. And in my head, I kept hearing hydrangea. Now, I have hydrangea plants out in my backyard, so I know what hydrangeas are.
Yes.
But I'm thinking, what's with the hydrangeas? But I'm listen and confirm. And, when I get on my computer, I'm like, hydrangeas, kidneys. I think she had kidney stones. And hydrangea is a remedy for kidney stones.
Wow.
And so I've learned when I hear, especially to hear the weird information, that I listen and confirm.
Wow.
But when it comes through on a visual level or on a feeling level, I mean, I've been doing this for so long, and this is basically how my life has been. I mean, I didn't realize that I was psychic as a young person, but no one ever, I just didn't know, true story. And I was about 20, and I was working as a drafter for, and I don't know how old you are, for Memorex, and they made floppy disks.
Memorex,
that
yes.
really suits me. So there was a testing lab next door to where my cubicle was, and there was a guy about my age, and we were hellions. We were the youngest people at the company, and we would do chair races up and down the hallway, all kinds of things that 20-year-old people do. And his was an older, and I always tell this story, and I always have to predicate it with, this is through the lens of a 20-year-old. So his boss was older and he was balding. And so he had this pretty serious comb over happening, but he was a nice enough guy. And I would say hi to him in the morning, and we would go at 3:00, my friend and I, to go get a soda. And I'd always ask him, do you want us to bring you anything? And I'd bring him a soda and whatever. And so he didn't come to work one day, which was odd. It was just odd that he wasn't there. So the following day, I go into the office for my regular morning, hello, how you doing? And he's standing there, and he had a little round Band-Aid on the top of his head. So my thought is, literally my thought was, because I'm sick sometimes, was that he had a zit on his head, and it was like red and pussy, and he put the Band-Aid on there to cover it up, because,
to cover that.
Because it was under the comb over part. And I walked up to him, and I crossed my arms, and I looked at him straight in the face and said, well, where were you yesterday, having them check for a brain tumor? And his face turned white, and he walked out of the room. And then the assistant came and was screaming at me, because his boss thought that he had come and told me that that's where he was the day before, having them check for a brain tumor.
Really?
And I just said, wow, that's a weird coincidence. And I did not own it as a psychic thing. And stuff like that happened to me all the time.
Wow. So, yeah, similar situations have happened to my son. He was once at school and that class was going to start, and the teacher arrived and he was like a little bit excited. And he said, "Oh, guess what?" And everybody thought was going to be like a surprise test. And my son immediately said, "Your wife is pregnant." So he looked at him and like, "How did you know that?" And my son, he told me, "Mom, was something like I didn't even thought about it. I just said it without thinking." And was that the reality? His wife was pregnant and the teacher was really happy and he wanted to share that news with a class. And situations like that happen to my son sometimes.
I mean, I joke around, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept of chakras, the energy centers in the body.
Chakras, yes, that is another important topic that I would like to have more information about it. Tell me, what is that about? Is
Well,
that like the third eye?
Well, like the third eye, and there are 7 of them. And so when people sit there and just say things like when I said to that gentleman, "Where were you yesterday?" having them check for a brain tumor, or your son saying his wife is pregnant, it's because the person received the information. I mean, because these are like little radio receivers of different frequencies. And I always joke around that my 7th chakra is directly connected to my mouth, and some of the most true and honest, unfiltered, very much unfiltered things that I will say to someone come out just that way, just like your son.
Wow, that is amazing.
And there's not really any control because you just say it. And it's like, oops.
Yeah, oops, I said it. Oops, what to do? Right?
But it always is true. That's the thing. Even if you say something that might not, maybe you weren't supposed to say out loud. I've had that happen. Not that it was necessarily bad, but it just, comes out. I mean, I've had that situation with this one manager, and I'm not going to repeat what I said to him. I mean, it wasn't awful. It's politically incorrect. How's that?
Okay.
But when I walked away from him, I knew that what I said was so true. His boat burned. Okay, he was moving from California to Arkansas, which is a landlocked state, and somehow his boat burned down, and it was one that you had to put in the harbor, so it wasn't like you could put it on a trailer, but it was big enough that you couldn't just like put your truck into the water and take the boat out,
Okay.
It was a big boat. And I made a comment about that in New York is a very appropriate comment. In Texas or California, not so appropriate. But knowing this man, I know that he burned his boat.
Wow. To cover the insurance, or what was the purpose?
Yeah, to get the insurance money.
That is crazy. Oh my God. Wow.
And at first, because I wasn't even thinking it. It was just this comment came out of my mouth, and I'm like, oh my God. I totally could see him burning his boat down.
Wow, Rita. That
Yes.
is, wow. Oh my God. So do you consider that a gift or a curse? Because like when I experienced everything that my son happened, and because my grandma had the same type of ability, she used to see a lot of things, bad things, Rita, and that is another part that I would like to talk about it, ghost, paranormal stuff, because my grandma used to see demonic entities, and I mean, for me, was considered more like a curse than a gift. But what is your opinion?
So, and I know this isn't this way for everyone, but for me, it's very easy for me to just turn it off. And I really have to turn it on and make a conscious effort to open that channel up, to receive that information.
Okay.
But except when it's on a feeling level. Feelings are much harder because chakra-wise, it's your 2nd chakra, and it's just a lot harder to block. You can't really turn it off. You feel what you feel. And you can kind of protect yourself for certain periods of time. But if you're around toxic people, or if you're, like I always joke around, like Walmart is very challenging for me. because there's just so much energy there, and there are certain situations that there's just too much energy and I get overloaded very easily. And that's when it can become a little bit of a curse. But as far as like seeing a ghost or doing a reading for someone.
So that you mentioned, Rita, about Walmart, my son used in the past public transportation in Mexico. He lives in Mexico. He's an adult. He's 26 years old. And he used to feel like when he told me, Mom, when I was in that bus, I could feel a severe headache, like a suddenly, boom. And like as soon as walk out to that bus, the headache went away. And he told me that happened once and I didn't pay attention about it, but has happened to me more like frequently in different places. The same headache, and as the headache came, went away like immediately. And I was just thinking maybe that is like a bad energy, or
it depends. Different people receive stuff differently. Like for me, if I'm around bad energy, like a person that's got bad energy, or like I used to do ghost hunting, and if I go into an environment that has bad energy, I get nauseous, and I feel like I want to vomit. Not that I do, but the stomach thing. But your son might be sensitive. Like I'm very kinesthetic, which is an aspect of that feeling sense. Where if your back, like if I'm doing a session with you and your back hurts, now my back hurts, and if I'm sitting there talking to you about, a rib, like if you have a rib and you're complaining about the rib, now my rib is throbbing,
wow.
And so there's this whole mirroring aspect that can happen. And as soon as I like move on to a different organ or I'm done with the session, it's gone, so that is a real thing. It is a real thing.
So
your son sounds like he's very sensitive.
It is. And he is the type of person, Mom, I got divorced from his dad. And so I had boyfriends, right? Relationships, 2 or 3 of them. And he like, Mom, I don't like him for any reason. And he was right. So yeah, he has a lot of sensitivity. So Rita, you mentioned something that really attracted me a lot about ghost hunting. Because when I started this podcast, I had a terrible experience. So I was so excited about the podcast, started as a hobby, but now I'm thinking more to be dedicated to do audiobooks or maybe writing a book. I have a lot of paranormal situations in the family. So my mom's mom, my God, she used to see a lot of things. And then my son, and I had a terrible experience when I was 15 years old. Unfortunately, one of my friends, and was my neighbor, killed herself. And I was like almost like a kid, a child, 15 years old. Never had before that, never was afraid for anything. Like, I don't know. It was to me everything normal. I could sleep. When she died, like after 3 months later, and this is my first episode. I wanted to start with that because that changed my life forever. Suddenly, yeah, during the night, I woke up feeling like I can't explain, Rita. Was something like I could feel somebody or something next to my bed. So strong, but I was afraid. I was scared. I was terrified. And I couldn't explain that for many nights, the same situation. Went to bed and for any reason woke up in the middle of the night feeling the same sensation. So my friend was Catholic. I am Catholic, but she was devoted to the point like for Easter, we used to go to Mass every day, etc. So her mom was atheist. So when my friend died, she never prayed a rosary for her. Nobody prayed a rosary for her. Nobody did anything for her, she being Catholic. So, and suddenly during those nights that I was thinking, what is that? Because I wanted to have an explanation. So crossed my mind, my friend. So, and I was like, maybe she's trying to tell me something because she was Catholic and she believed in God. She was devoted. She was a good person. By mistake, she killed herself. And I mean, as a Catholic, my belief is nobody, not even you, can finish your life. Only God can do it. So, and for any reason, I thought about it. And I was so afraid, Rita, that I was like, please, please, lady, don't show up, because if you do that, I'm going to have a heart attack. I was scared, super scared. So when I said those words, Rita, I never felt that sensation again. So one day I woke up in the morning and I said, wow, I didn't feel anything. I didn't wake up in the middle of the night. Nothing happened. And so that for me was like a 99% assurance that we as a matter, we don't die. Because I mean, scientifically, it's proof that we are matter and matter transforms, right? So, and I was just thinking, okay, my
No, but
friend.
it doesn't take into account our soul. And it doesn't take into account the spirit, that the divine spark that God puts into all of us. I think it's just sad that the contemporary model, and I'm going to say the Western model, the Judeo-Christian model, is what you can see on the physical plane is what there is. And there is so much more that we don't know and we don't understand. And nobody is really willing to test it. Well, when you're talking about psychic stuff, we don't have the tools to measure it, and so, and when you sit there and you look at the research, and let's just use ghosts as an example, it's like they can't measure it. They can't, I'm going to say, document it, because in most instances, it's a subjective experience. You see the ghost, you feel the ghost, you have it touch you, you smell the perfume, whatever the thing is, but it's dismissed and it's discounted. And to me, there is this whole world, this whole universe outside of this three-dimensional reality that there are people like myself and you that want to explore and talk about. And then there are so many other people that can't wrap their mind around it or are told that it's taboo and there's something bad about it and you shouldn't participate in it because you're going to go to hell.
Yeah. So, okay, in your experiences, Rita, as a ghost hunter, tell us like a experience that you have considered has been so terrified, or something that you really felt afraid, or you really feel like, oh my God, what I'm doing? Because I'll tell you what I was doing too, but you please tell us first.
So I went to the Berkeley Psychic Institute and studied with them for 2 years. So I'm just going to preface it with that.
Wow.
And that's where I learned that like all of that weird stuff that used to happen to me when I was younger was having psychic experiences a lot. And I was part of a house hunting team where we would go into, or not a house healing team. And a group of psychics would go into this house and we would kind of do like a paranormal investigation, but we were just psychics. And we were looking for like vortexes and ghosts and issues with the land and whatever. We were looking for stuff. And then we would do a reading on the house and then a healing on the house. It was actually very cool. And so doing that, I would see a lot of ghosts because, I was looking for them because normally I grew up in a haunted house and there was the dead guy that lived in the bedroom. He was, or in the basement, and it was a residual haunting. It wasn't an active haunting, but he scared me. And after that, I moved to this house. I went to school in Oswego, New York. And I'm going to make a very long story short. So I moved into this house with 3 other people. We were all college students. And I go down to the bar, and get a beer. And I'm talking to this local guy. And he goes, well, where do you live? I said, well, I live on the corner of 5th and Bridge. And he goes, oh, the old funeral parlor.
My
Okay,
God.
so I just moved from the house with the dead guy in the basement, and now I'm living in the freaking funeral parlor, which did not thrill me at all because I was already scared of ghosts, and I still have this weird ghost thing. And my roommates were theater majors, and so they were always doing theater things, always gone. And I would be there at night by myself a lot. And I would hear things creak up the stairs and the lights would twitch and this tapping on the wall. I mean, it creeped me out. I would just turn the music up louder. That's all I could do is turn the music up louder and ignore it. Now if I see a ghost, if I'm in a room with a ghost, it doesn't bother me at all. It's the weird noises, and the weird, like that thing just fell off the table. That creeps me out, and then there's something called electronic voice phenomena where people sit there and try to talk to the ghost and whatever. That kind of creeps me out too. So, but I have this hard rule, like I have 2 ghosts that live in my house. They came with the house. They're fine. I don't have an issue with them. But I don't want any other ghosts coming to my house. And I have this hard rule, no more ghosts. Don't come home with me. Don't visit me. I'll visit you at your house. Don't come to mine.
So it's something that you have to say like a firmly, stop, don't follow me, or
no, I kind of have this like giant protection around my house where it's just like,
okay.
No ghosts.
Okay, yeah, I'm asking you because I have a cousin. He has the same type of ESP, and I have a lot of stories. Actually, those are part of my episodes. And he used to have dreams with people like suddenly, for example, a boy. Oh, I need your help. I need your help. So, and my cousin didn't know who was this kid, and he didn't even know where was that place, etc. So, but he had the ability to ask or investigate or continue those dreams. He said this is like a astral projection or a different dimension or something like that. And he asked this little boy, "Who are you? I don't know who are you. I don't know how to help you. What you are looking for me?" And the kid told him, "My body is under these stairs. I don't want to be here. Please help me." Those type of situations my cousin had, and he said that he had to talk like a firmly to say like this is my space, this is my house, you are not allowed to be here.
Most ghosts, not all, are respectful, and will listen if you put a boundary in place.
Okay, yes, he puts boundaries.
But I have a very firm boundary around that one. You can't come to my house.
So, Rita, when you say residual ghost or residual energy, what's the difference between a ghost or spirit, an apparition? Could you define what is the difference between all those, or is just names that people put on them?
Okay, that's a lot. Okay, so the term ghost gets a lot of things all kind of lumped into that category. When you're talking about ghosts in particular, there are two kinds that you will normally, and I'm going to say kinds that you'll normally run into. One is a residual haunting, which is the most common, and the second is an active haunting, which is less common. And so a residual haunting is that there is the energy of an individual that has kind of imprinted itself on that location, so it's not abnormal, to go to someone's house to see an older woman standing in the kitchen at the counter, or walking around the kitchen, or doing certain activities. And it's kind of like a recording and it just keeps playing out. The dead guy that lived in the basement. So I don't know if this is true, but it resonates with me. So the deli that was around the corner that we would go there all the time, he said that someone had been killed in the house that I grew up in. And to me, it was the dead guy that lived in the basement and that there was some kind of fight that happened and the guy ended up dying It's in this one specific spot. If you ask any of my brothers and sisters, they can take you right to the spot where this energy is. He doesn't move around. It's just in this one spot. The only one that never felt it was my mom, which, whatever, she was pretty psychic herself. So, not that she would own that. She just would trust me on things a lot.
Wow. So when you say it was in a specific area, in a specific place, is where the vortex is, or is something different? What is a vortex? Like a portal to another?
No, I said
realm?
that's where he was. That's where the ghost was. The energy
The
of
energy.
the ghost was. So my assumption was that's where he died, was in the
Okay.
spot.
On the spot.
Because you could walk down that hall and you could feel it. It was obvious to me.
Okay. And that is the residual haunting.
Residual, so there's not an active ghost presence there. It's just energy that has been left residually.
Yeah. Okay.
They're there. The energy is
The
there.
energy there.
But the difference between a residual haunting is that they're more like a recording and you can't really interact with them. Where if it's an active haunting, they very much interact with you. They might move around the house. It's just different. And it's a lot. I would say that in houses that are quote unquote haunted, that at least 80% of them only have residual activity happening in them, and maybe 20% have active hauntings going on. It's really a very big, different number.
Okay. So do you practice any religion, Rita?
So,
Or
I
what are your
Catholic.
beliefs?
I was brought up Catholic. My dad was Jewish. I don't practice any religion. If I had to pick the one that vibrates with me the most, is I would say that I was way more Jewish. I believe in God. I believe my gifts come from God, and that's where I sit. But I'm going to share this story because you're Catholic and you'll think it's funny. So my dad was Jewish, and when he had a couple of strokes back to back, and so he was basically in the last days, and he was paralyzed, and it was not a good thing. But we were all brought up Catholic. We went to Catholic school. We didn't know any Jewish stuff. And so we wanted to pray for him, but we didn't know any Jewish prayers, which we thought would be much more appropriate to say, around a Jewish guy. But we didn't have anything. So my entire family sat around my dad and we said a rosary.
So your book, Rita, I just got it as a PDF.
Angels and Insider's Guide to Ghosts, Spirits, and Attached Entities.
Yes, tell me about that. What was your inspiration? Because brought my attention, I had to take some notes here. The different titles of your books, like Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods.
Mm-hmm.
That is another one that really brought my attention. I'll get it, I'll read it later. But I'll start with Guide to Ghosts, Spirits, and Attached Entities. What is an attached entity?
So, I was talking about how most ghosts are kind people. And if you sit there and you set a boundary, that they'll respect the boundary.
Okay.
An attached entity, and I'm just going to say they are the narcissists of the spirit world. And so they will come and invade your auric field. They'll come into your auric field. And what they want to do is control and manipulate you. It's an interesting phenomena. They like it when your energy is lowered or somehow diminished and you are in a place of negative thinking, because it gives them the opportunity to kind of sneak in and take control. And, the way to get rid of them is to raise your energy and move out of that space. So I have a lot of people that will come to me and go, oh, well, I have an attached entity. Can you get rid of it? And they think, well, I can do one healing session and get rid of the spirit. And then they caveat and say, well, I've worked with all of these healers and the spirit will go away for a while, but then he'll come back. But what they don't understand is healer didn't get rid of the ghost. The healer helped them raise their vibration enough that they can move the ghost to the periphery so that they weren't influencing them again. but then something happened that knocked their energy back down, that opened the door to let the entity back in, which is why they're bothering them again. And the only way to really heal it, okay, I don't want to say in 100% of the cases, but a lot of the time, is to address the emotion or the belief that's being triggered that's messing up your energy in the first place. Because if you're not, so let's say if somebody says you're stupid, or they look at you with that look that makes you feel inferior, like let's say that's one of your triggers, and when that's being triggered, that drops your energy and allows the entity to come in. It's only by fixing that inside of yourself so that you're not triggered, so you're not as triggered, so that if you are triggered, you don't go into this deep nosedive of negative thinking that's going to keep the entity from coming in.
Wow, that is super interesting, Rita. So, do you think that visit like a haunted places or when you do like a ghost hunting?
You cannot get an attached entity.
No?
No.
Okay. Well, so
Never.
never. Okay.
Now, it doesn't mean that they won't necessarily follow you home and hang out for a little while. I've had that happen a couple of times. Not very often, because I got the shield and visibility on my house, but I've had that happen a couple of times, but they don't attach. There's usually some kind of life trauma that's going on for you that can open that door. The most common place an entity will attach is in childhood. Later in life, there's usually some kind of an addicting behavior that, drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, whatever, that you are compromised, and they use that as the way to get in. So you often hear stories of, Fred's a really nice guy. And then when he gets drunk, he's like this totally other person. It's because he is totally this other person because it's Fred on the entity.
Wow.
And the only way for the entity not to come out is for Fred not to drink anymore.
That is interesting to know. So here in Austin, there is a hotel, Haunted Driscoll, is in downtown. I don't know if you have heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2022, I went to New Orleans. New Orleans, the cemeteries, the haunted houses, the ghost tours. I went even in the night to a cemetery. So we came, nothing happened. Everything was normal. I was so excited. We took some pictures and we got something like a weird things, but I'm not sure. So I was just trying to get more like a videos of a ghost, something exciting for me to post in the social media. And anyway, so 2023, we went, my husband and I, to this tour here in Austin in the downtown. And so 2 days after, Rita, I had a dream, like a vivid dream. So I was laying in bed, and suddenly I saw like a black mass coming to my bedroom. During that dream, I had like a sleep paralysis. Have you heard about sleep paralysis? Mm-hmm. It's like you can't move. But I was dreaming. For me, it was a dream. But in my dream, I wanted to move and I wanted to wake up my husband. I couldn't because I was screaming. So I wanted to pray and I couldn't because I don't know. So when I woke up, I was really terrified with a dream. But time passed, Rita, and I was feeling really weird. I was feeling like I was observed. Many things happened in the house. One of my episodes, I was explaining everything that happened because there were more. This happened for several weeks and months. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to pay attention, but this was in a way like affecting my life. I was feeling really bad, feeling like something was observing me, like that bad energy, bad feeling. So one day I woke up with a bruise in one of my thighs. I was feeling like nauseous when I was eating, things going crazy here in the house, Rita?
Well, and like I said, they can't follow you home, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're after you or that they're attached to you. They just like are hanging around.
Yeah, but
I mean,
affecting.
it's like I'm not in a mental place to like do a reading on it, which normally I would do if we weren't on air. Uh,
So
so
yeah. So have you had or have you known any person that really got an attachment from an entity, like to the point to you? Okay,
which is why I know so much about them.
okay,
'Cause I have
okay.
firsthand experience.
Yes. Is that the story that you told me when you were 20 years old, or was a different situation?
As far as the entity,
Yes.
I had the entity since I was a little kid.
Okay.
So I grew up with it. And I just assumed that that was part of me. And then I discovered that it was not part of me. And, it took a long time to understand it and finally get rid of it.
Okay. And what is your opinion? What is your perspective right now? You are not afraid of them anymore because you know how
Well,
to
because they can't just glom onto you. They can't just grab onto you and attach to you. There has to be some kind of initiating circumstance. You grow up in a family of trauma. You're an alcoholic or have some kind of drug addiction. I've heard of situations where a person is gravely ill in a hospital, but I mean, we're talking about heavy duty situations that open the door for the entity to come in. I've had clients who did automatic writing, or that did channeling, but they invite them in, and so the normal person that goes to a cemetery or goes to a haunted house isn't inviting the entity in. They have to be invited in, even if it's kind of like sneaky around the back doorway.
Yeah. Do you believe in demonic possession?
I've experienced a couple. I mean, I've just worked with a couple of people that, in my opinion, whatever was attached to them was beyond my skill set of helping them. How's that? Because they were just that evil. And it takes a certain kind of mentality to really work with the person and work with the entity to get it to go. It's just a very different skill set. Fairly, in my opinion, rare happening. I had a woman, it was an older woman who called, who was complaining about an entity attachment. And she was talking about when the entity would come in, and I'm just really kind of paraphrasing part of this, that people would say that she didn't even look the same. Like if she looked in the mirror, she said she didn't even look the same. And I don't know, she had this whole long list of, I'm going to say, symptoms, which were kind of hard to not have my BS meter go off, but she was very sincere, and I wasn't going to dish her because she was being very sincere, and, maybe she was being a little melodramatic, but her voice sounded very frail and very scared and very timid. And so by herself, there wasn't really anything I could do to help her move the entity out because it was a nasty one. Nasty, nasty, nasty. And she needed help to do that. Okay, so, but I have some friends that are more demonologist kind of people that I referred her to this one friend of mine. And, and I just gave the information. I gave her his information. I mean, I got his permission, obviously, gave her the information. And I don't know, it was like a week later, maybe 2 weeks later. And I get this phone call. And the way that I'm going to say it is her entity called me up.
Wow.
And, so this is this lady. Yes, like people tell me. I mean, she had the very soft-spoken voice, regular. The person that called me on the phone was like, your friend never called me up. And I was like, I have never had an entity freaking call me up. I said, I am going to get Mike on the phone right now and I'll have him call you. I called my friend Mike. I'm like, her entity just called me up.
Wow. You didn't feel afraid of that, Rita?
No. I mean, because I know they're not going to do anything to me.
I would be terrified.
I mean, because they're just people. I mean, unless you get the alien ones. I mean, because a lot of times they're just really nasty people. Like evil number one. I'm very rarely do you see, entities that are not human in form, which I'm not even going to get into that because that's a whole long story. So,
So when you talk about aliens, sounds to me like you feel more afraid of aliens to demonic entities. Am I right or no?
I've seen more ghosts and I've seen more entities. I've never seen a UFO or an alien, so I don't really have commentary on that.
Okay. Okay. And what happened with this person at the end? Did you know?
Nope.
No. Wow. I'm really afraid of these demonic entities. My grandma used to say that she wanted to pray the rosary and there was like a black mass next to her, bothering her, trying to avoid to pray the rosary. And she told me how to pray the rosary, and she used to tell me that I needed to pray because that's the only way I can be protected from evil. I grew up actually in a house that was built next to a cemetery, and everybody, like a lot of people, I didn't see anything. I felt weird couple of times, yes, but never saw anything. I have cousins, I have aunts, uncles, my grandma. They used to see a lot of things in that house. I don't know really what happened there, but my dad at that time was with my mom. They got divorced when I was really young, about 8 years old. But my dad was like a bipolar, sometimes was the most amazing person, sweet and caring, and the other day was hitting my mom to the point to send her several times to the hospital. So I think in that house there was like a bad energy, Rita.
You think?
Yes, things happened to my mom. Many things happened to her. So I don't know. And so talking about demonic entities, I'm afraid of that.
And
So, cause
see, I don't know what your perception of a demonic entity is. I mean, I've never seen what I call them that because as far as I'm concerned, there really isn't any humanity in them, in their character, in their how they present themselves. But for me to sit there and say the devil sent them or they're a demon or whatever, I can't say that.
to me, a demonic entity is something evil, something that wants to cause harm to your life.
That's
And
like a giant group of spirits, giant.
for example,
The attached entities, alien entities, there's a whole spectrum out there that are invisible, and there are a lot of people that like to take even ghosts, just plain old ghosts, and put them into that demonic category, and I don't agree with that. How's that?
okay, that's fine. I respect your point of view. Obviously, yeah, I respect
There
that, Rita.
can be like, because I kind of put them on a grading system.
Yeah, okay, so what would be the explanation of where these kind of entities are right now? Like in a different dimensions, different
They're in
realms?
a different time space continuum, so, some hang around on the earth, some are other places, they come through vortexes. It's, really individualized. Some hang out in a location, some roam freely, some are attached to pieces of furniture or whatever. I mean, you can't just take this whole ghost world and put it all into one little box. It's like saying that everybody on the planet, are white Anglo-Saxon people, which would be a lie. We have a big variety of races, but we also have a big variety of personalities and beliefs and concepts. And it's no different in the spirit world. It is a very robust community of invisible dead things.
Yeah.
From our perspective, dead things.
So from your point of view, are there good entities or good spirits? Do you believe in angels? Have you seen once an angel or felt or
Well, if you sit there and you start talking about beings without bodies, the word that people would attach to them are angels and spirit guides. I have worked with people that I have seen their guardian angels, because they're attached to that person and working with that person. I know that angels have intervened in my life on multiple occasions, but to see like an angel with wings or whatever,
so?
but that's what we think they're supposed to look like.
Yeah. So, okay, when you were talking about the chakras, we have 7 chakras.
Like you're just opening up another giant can of worms there.
Yes.
That's the topic of another interview.
All right. Well, Rita, this conversation has been really interesting. I'm looking forward to read the Dark Angels, your book. You have a web page, Soul Healer, right?
Healer.com, and people can go there to get information about me, or if they want to get a reading, if they have something going on in their lives, they can just use the contact form and reach out to me. They can also, again, go to my Thursday Night Live, which on Just Energy or YouTube on Just Energy Radio, 7 p.m. Central. And all my books are on my website. They're all on the major publishers, online distributor places, and it's all
right. Yes, so
I'll
leave the link to your web page and your YouTube channel, Just Energy Radio. Just Energy Radio is the YouTube channel. Is so interesting. I just started to watch some videos. Please go and see Dr. Rita Louise' amazing job there. And thank you very much for your time, Dr. Rita, and nice to meet you virtually. See you next time, okay?
That sounds
perfect.
Thank you. It was wonderful speaking with you. So you have a great night. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
All right. Good night. Thank
Bye.
you.